As Tempest Rising gets fully operational multiplayer matchmaking based on ELO leaderboards and players from around the globe start to fight to see who is the best GDF or Dynasty player, let's take a look at 3 hard multiplayer matches I had fun in recently against some of the players you will be facing. My go-to faction for now is Tempest Dynasty, but do share in the comments which one is your favorite to play with in Skirmish or multiplayer.
Building captured.
The first match of this video is against a GDF player who made me become a thieving turtle during the course of the match, and you will soon see why I say so. My opening build order with the Dynasty faction in this match was suboptimal and ran like this: machine shop and 2 power plants with the security plan to reduce the cost of the machine shop, which I turn off once the building is placed to prevent being on low power. Once I have power provided by new power plants, I turn that plan on again to reduce the cost of new units and buildings, as well as activate the power distribution mode to speed up the construction of the first Tempest harvesting rig. The first barracks I build in the range of that active distribution mode to speed up recruitment of Dynasty guards, to secure Tempest processing centers across the map for later capture, or just to deny enemy engineers from capturing them. The thing was that the enemy player had very similar plans and sent infantry units sooner to garrison a building next to my closest Tempest processing center. Luckily, I managed to garrison a building with my own troops, and the stage is set for the rest of this match. For Tempest harvesting operations, I went for 3 rigs on the field next to my base, only then planning to send the rigs out onto the map. I do go overboard with the power, as I got some from the captured Tempest processing center and didn't need so much right now. After capturing the closest mission control center, that is where I build my next machine shop, to both be close to another Tempest field for new rigs and also to send pillagers to clear out enemy bunkers. As those 2 bunkers traded slow machine gun fire, I used waypoints to take an engineer around the fight, hoping to capture more buildings, but he just ran into another building garrisoned by my opponent. At least the pillager tank finally arrived to clear this one out and let me secure the second Tempest processing center. The Dynasty Doctrines I prefer to research are the ones from the 2nd and 3rd Doctrine trees, to make infantry stronger and light units gain veterancy faster, and later the HP of vehicles and aircraft gets boosted. Now, the reason I rushed a salvage van out is to extend my construction range next to the captured Tempest processing center and garrison buildings, as it can repair all of them and let me construct new buildings there alongside the engineer who was already there. At this point, I was floating a lot of credits, which I should have already spent on new units and buildings, as I still don't play fast enough, and I did secure 4 Tempest fields with already 7 Tempest harvesters on the job, with a second command center being deployed. This is the part of the match where I usually start building an air factory, as I want air units for both defense and offense. I really wanted to stop being a turtle and move on to the map, but I was welcomed with a hail of gunfire from my flank and quickly retreated to my strong point. The enemy player went for the usual combo of drone operators, sentinels and hunter tanks and trashed my little army quite quickly. Now, with a deployed salvage van, a field infirmary and some additional units, this little defensive position became much harder to crack, and I even reinforced it with the lockdown support power, because that is how desperate the situation was. The only thing that saved me here was the enemy player not just rushing past all of this, and the fact that I had destroyed all his sentinels, which would have made short work of my infantry. This is when I decided to go with turrets as the last form of defense. My dragonflies were ready just in time to start shooting down enemy drones as they started coming in with his reinforcements. As my army grew due to my training buildings being so close and his army was losing units faster than he could bring them, the battle finally turned my way, and I chased his units off with some insanely leveled up infantry units. Adding a bunch of turrets also helped, but I kept placing them haphazardly instead in an organized and aligned defense. Now a lot of back and forth probing attacks happened for a while on this position, and I was astutely aware how open I was on the other part of the map. This is when I realized my opponent was probably too, and I decided to do a daring raid into his main base. Since I already recruited Hammerhands, which are Dynasty's air transports, I order up more engineers to pack up into them.
Insufficient funds.
At this point, I was starting to run low on places to harvest Tempest, and would have to move to new fields, even fight for them. To fill up all my Hammerhands, I would need more than just a single barracks, but I was already very late in building one more. The one good thing is that I overbuilt the Porcupine long-range artillery unit, so I could press my opponent and his garrison buildings, as well as turrets which he kept on building. I didn't even know his forward base was so close and on my end of the map, which was a very offensive move on his part. I was having some issues with ordering around the Hammerhands, as I must admit to have been in panic mode since the first 5 minutes of this match. Not using keyboard shortcuts for construction and recruitment is a big problem, and I really must learn them by heart to be able to play faster. While I started to prepare my sneak engineer attack, and since I was low on credits, I backed off and went on the defensive once again. When I finally had enough engineers to pack a full Hammerhand, I gave it a bunch of waypoints designed to avoid any enemy garrison buildings or turrets and to be able to reach his main base. Losing all my infantry in one strike from GDF's trebuchets shows you just how powerful that unit can be when it strikes through. Only upside of this losing fight was my Tempest instability missile hitting his own army, and he didn't move it much at all. His own support power, the Tempest airstrike, missed my units just by a little bit, as I had moved them all forward to fight. But it did disable my turrets. I straight up lost this fight and my army with only a few units remaining. It went from bad to worse in less than a minute, and I had very few units in the build queue and basically no credits left. But my sneak attack was finally reaching its target. You can bet my heart was racing and hands shaking from anticipation, but I was shocked I didn't see his command center there. Turns out he moved it at some point. I disembarked my engineers and started capturing enemy buildings I did find. There were some obvious glitches with the units dropping down from transports, but in the end I was able to both capture and sell 2 refineries and both tech buildings, meaning my opponent was going to lose access to all advanced units. Basically a devastating blow in the middle of combat. This was a huge morale boost for me, and even while being pressed by a bigger and stronger army, I wasn't going to surrender now. I was losing turrets as fast as I was building them, and the main fight wasn't going my way, but I had a second wave of my sneak base capturing plan ready. Since he had so many buildings on my side of the map, I decided to try and capture those. I noticed his own attack force was down by more than half the units, and without more advanced units being produced, he was having a more difficult time pushing forward. And the moment my transport showed up with engineers in his base, which was defenseless, he surrendered the match. The statistics clearly showed we harvested about the same amount of Tempest, but my kill ratio was 1.5 and his 0.5, meaning my units were far more efficient at destroying his. This was a really hard match for me versus GDF, so let's change the map and the opponent for a mirror match between 2 Dynasty players. My opening here was very similar, and I went to capture Tempest processing centers just as last time. Of course, this turned into a skirmish at one of the locations, but I was quick on the micro to exit the building so I didn't lose my missile troopers inside the building as it gets burned by the pillager. Being able to hold on both middle map Tempest processing centers and the one on my side of the map was already putting me ahead. Skirmishes around these continued, but where I lucked out was to enter my opponent's base from behind with 2 Havocs and start hitting his barracks, which was already low on health because he used the distribution mode to produce infantry faster. They managed to blow it up, a huge blow so early on, and started harassment on his Tempest rigs and wheels, which collected the Tempest. As my opponent was dealing with my Havocs, this reduced the pressure on the middle of the map, letting me plan and expand to more of the map, especially since I was playing with double barracks from the start. As soon as I had a more sizable force, I used the same tactic to go for the edge of the map and try another base attack. I entered it totally unopposed and decided to focus fire on the command center. I knew most of my attack force was going to die, but dealing this kind of a blow felt totally worth it. Once I managed to blow up my objective, withdrawing and making sure to capture more of the map looked like the best option, especially since I had more engineers ready as well as a new MCV. The first matchsticks I decided to use to attack his captured buildings and economy, while when I gathered new units, I planned to send them off to a new base raid. I wasn't expecting long-range artillery there, so I decided to just run and get inside of their minimal range, as they can't shoot at my units. This didn't help much because of his other units, and in the end I didn't end up dealing much damage, but I could have easily blown up that machine shop, which was low on HP. My matchsticks kept up their harassment of his Tempest rigs, but it was proving to be micro-intensive because once the matchsticks spent their ammo, they wanted to go back to base directly through his main base, so I had to micro them around each time or risk losing them. Now the decisive battle took place at his main base and my secondary base, because while I was traveling with my army, his own already found my base. Luckily, the turrets can hold a few seconds, and I had unit production close at hand for backup. He did order his units back to defense, of course, which let my secondary command center survive, and it didn't take him long to bring his army back to his base. I did, however, already manage to blow up his command center again, and unfortunately I missed with my call-in support powers. I didn't have enough forces to deliver the final blow, so we ended up going for round 2 of attacking each other's bases. Fortunately, my economy and army were bigger overall, and I had already inflicted a lot of damage, so this match also ended with a surrender from the opponent. Last multiplayer match of this video brings us back to the Bridges Out map for another round with GDF, but a different opponent. In this match, I attempted an engineer-only takeover of neutral buildings, but I was ambushed almost every time. I started going much more into the defensive mode, even protecting my harvesting operations with turrets and managing to fight off his rush with sentinels. I knew I was already far behind on map control, eco and army building, so I was scrambling to produce more Tempest rigs and get my income up so I could catch up with my opponent's growth. He didn't push me hard anymore on any front, so I was expecting a major attack, possibly even one from the air. But no, it was the good old combo of drone operators and hunter tanks. Only after losing this first major battle did I notice the air attack did come in fact, and aimed at my Tempest rigs by the GDF's Queller aircraft. I knew I was in real trouble now, as I didn't tech up to defend against them or defeat the enemy's land army. I was feeling totally outmatched and out-microed, and I knew it. I was recruiting more infantry while I had tanks at my doorstep, and that could only end in one way against an opponent who didn't shy away from crushing my units under his threats. I was trying to move infantry between buildings so they would be harder for his tanks to crush, but the comms officer was destroying me at range along with drone operators. With my harvesters constantly harassed, my army lost and my forward base overrun, I knew it was game over. I was honestly really impressed by the speed at which I lost and the fact he even started constructing buildings so close to my base. All I was left with was to congratulate my opponent and praise his skill. You can find more Tempest Rising videos as cards on the screen and links in the description. Do also feel free to offer tips and advice in the comments, while I want to thank you for watching and wish you all happy gaming.